We're at video number 9. We still haven't seen the results of the study yet. That's because we've got to use the contrast manager to specify the appropriate contrasts to compare different conditions. It takes a little bit of getting used to, so we're going to start off simple and get complicated in a later video. We've done the statistics, so we should have some results now. Let's look at them. Click the results button. Navigate to the SPM.mat file. And what we're immediately presented with is something called the contrast manager. This looks and feels very complicated at first, but it's actually quite straightforward. You just have to do a little bit more work now to find out what's going on in all these regressors. What we want to do is think about what we're trying to find. We've got 4 different conditions: the faces, scrambled, the objects, the places. And we want to see those voxels, those parts of the brain where there's more activation for faces, say, than the scrambled faces, for the objects than the scrambled, for the places than the scrambled. In fact, we're going to be looking at a number of different contrasts. But we'll start off by setting up a simple contrast and seeing what it means. We're going to define a T contrast. That is subtracting one set of betas from another, and we'll define that. And I want to look at the faces minus the scrambled objects. You could use a minus sign to say faces minus scrambled. This is just a text field, so we know what the contrast is. People tend to use a greater than symbol because a minus can just look like a hyphen. So it's like scrambled faces rather than faces minus scrambled. So this should show areas where we have more activation, greater activation for faces than scrambled, so the faces activation is greater than the scrambled. Now all we want to do is subtract the scrambled from the faces, so do faces minus scrambled, and to do that we use what they call a contrast weights vector. So that's going to be a +1 on the faces regressors and a -1 on the scrambled regressors. We've got 25 regressors, only 20 of which are interesting to us. These 5 are the constants, which we're not interested in. We're interested in the 4 for each of the 5 participants. And for each participant, the first regressor, the first condition, is the faces. So we'll put a +1 on the first one. The second one is scrambled, so we put a -1 on that, and then a space. At the moment we're not interested in the places or the scenes or the objects, so it's a 0 on both of those. I'm just doing a vector here, so I'm doing just a space between each digit. And in fact I want to repeat that sequence 1, -1, 0, 0 for all 5 participants. I could just type it in, or I could do copy and paste, 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 paste. And so that should put a +1 weight on the face condition for every participant, a -1 weight on the scrambled condition for every participant, and 0 on everything else. I can put another 5 zeros on the end for the constant regressors in which we have no interest, but if I just click submit anyway, it will write pad with zeros. And we can see here a little summary of the contrast we have just specified, which is +1 on the face, -1 on the scrambled, +1 on the face, -1 on the scrambled. We're going to come back to the contrast manager in a minute to look at different contrasts and the other comparisons we can make, but for now we want to go ahead and have a look at whether or not we found anything or not. It might seem complicated to specify a fairly simple contrast this way, but once you understand this, you'll be able to handle really complex contrasts with no problem at all.